She pushed my son into the Black Ocean for $2.2 billion. She thought she'd won the game, but I invented the game, and I was about to change the rules. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how a night meant for celebration turned into a nightmare. The smell of expensive champagne and salt air usually calmed me. It was the smell of success, the smell of the life I built. My name is Robert. The yacht we were on, the Sea Sovereign, was the crown jewel of my fleet. I built my empire from nothing. 40 years in Miami real estate. I started with one rundown building. I fought for every brick. I ended up owning half the skyline. The fortune was massive, $2.2 billion. And tonight I was giving it all to my son David. It was supposed to be the proudest night of my life. We were anchored 10 miles off the coast. Miami glittered on the water like scattered diamonds. A jazz band played softly. Everyone who mattered was here. Politicians, investors, celebrating the future, the official handover. But I couldn't shake the dread. It sat heavy in my stomach, cold and unwelcome. I rubbed the old scar on my palm, a habit from my early construction days, a reminder that even the strongest foundations can have hidden cracks. And I was looking at the biggest crack in my foundation. My eyes were locked on Sarah, my daughter-in-law. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. She wore a silver dress that clung to her like a second skin. She held David's arm tightly, laughing a little too loudly. But her eyes never stopped moving. They scanned the deck, the guests, the crew, like a hawk assessing its territory. They had been married exactly 1 year, an anniversary celebration, combined with the inheritance transfer. The perfect night, but something about Sarah always felt wrong. She appeared out of nowhere, a whirlwind romance. She claimed to be old money from Boston. Her past was foggy, vague. My lawyer Michael ran a background check. Michael is my oldest friend. A cautious man, he always drums his fingers on his desk when he's puzzled. The check came back clean, too clean. Michael's fingers drummed for a long time that day. I should have listened to the silence between the beats. A toast, Sarah called out. She lifted her crystal flute high. The massive emerald ring David gave her flashed aggressively under the deck lights. I watched her fingers. She started twirling the ring, a habit she had when she felt confident, when she felt in control. To David, she announced, the new king of Miami, and to our future, a future without limits. David beamed, blinded by love, blinded by the spotlight. He was a good kid, brilliant with numbers, compassionate. He inherited his mother's heart, but he trusted too easily. He hadn't had to fight the way I had. He hadn't learned that the world wasn't kind. He didn't know how to spot a shark in the water. I walked over to them. I forced a smile. It felt stiff on my face. Congratulations, son. You've earned this. Thanks, Dad, David said. He pulled me into a hug. I learned from the best. I won't let you down. He meant it. He always did. Just be smart, David, I murmured. My eyes flicked toward Sarah. Wealth like this, it's a heavy crown. It attracts the wrong kind of attention. Sarah's smile tightened. Just a fraction. The ring twirling stopped. Robert, don't be so cynical, she said. She leaned in. Her perfume was overwhelming. Gardenias and something sharp underneath. The trust is finalized. The papers are signed. It's time to enjoy the rewards. She said rewards like a predator tasting blood. I looked at my son. He was adjusting his glasses. A nervous habit he'd had since childhood. He felt the tension, even if he didn't understand it. I wanted to tell him to run, but it was already too late. The party wore on. I shook hands. I made small talk. I played the proud father, but the dread grew heavier. I kept rubbing the scar on my palm. A storm was brewing on the horizon. The sky turned an ugly shade of bruised purple. The air grew thick. Electric. The weather matched my mood. Most guests sensed the shift. They began leaving, taking tenders back to shore. The party was winding down. The deck cleared. The music faded. But the real danger was just beginning. The most dangerous predators wait for the crowd to thin out. I was near the galley, seeking a glass of water. My nerves were shot. That's when I heard them. David and Sarah were near the stern, the back of the boat, hidden by the shadows of the upper deck. Their voices carried on the rising wind. I stopped. Every instinct screamed at me to listen. I moved closer, staying in the shadows. David's voice was tight, strained. Sarah, slow down. We just got control of the trust today. I saw him adjusting his glasses again. He was stressed. Sarah's voice, usually sweet, was sharp. Metallic. Why wait, David? It's our money now. Why are you hesitating? The silence between them was heavy. The wind howled, filling the space where trust used to be. I'm not transferring half of it to a joint offshore account tonight, David insisted. $1 billion? It makes no sense. It's too sudden. It makes perfect sense, Sarah snapped. The sweetness entirely gone. We have that investment opportunity in Monaco. Eric is waiting for the wire. We have to move fast, or we lose the deal. Eric. I didn't know anyone named Eric. An unknown man. Offshore accounts. Monaco. A jolt of alarm shot through me. This wasn't just greed. This was a plan. I want Dad and Michael to look at the paperwork first, David said, his voice rising. I'm not moving that kind of money without advice. That's just reckless. Reckless, Sarah hissed. The venom in her voice was shocking. Reckless is letting your father control your life. I am your wife. Since when do you need his permission? David was silent. I could picture him, paralyzed by the conflict. Torn. We need to secure our future, not his, Sarah said, her voice dripping with contempt. She hated me. I could hear it now. Then she delivered the line that stopped my heart. Your father is old, David. His time is over. This is our time. His time is over. The words hit me like a physical blow. My blood ran cold. This was what I had feared. The subtle manipulations. The whispers in his ear. The slow isolation of David. She wasn't just trying to separate him from the money. She was trying to erase me. I couldn't stay hidden anymore. I stepped out of the shadows. Is there a problem? Sarah spun around. Her face instantly smoothed back into a polite, charming mask. It was terrifying how quickly she could swim. The transformation was instantaneous. Not at all, Robert, she smiled brightly. Too brightly, just discussing finances. It's a bit overwhelming for David. So much responsibility. She made my son sound like a child. An incompetent child. David, I said, looking directly at him, trying to break the spell she had on him. We talked about this. The strategy is long-term growth. Preservation of capital. Nothing moves without careful review by Michael and the board. That's the Yud. David looked trapped. He adjusted his glasses again. Dad, I know. But Sarah has some innovative ideas. This Monaco deal seems solid. He was defending her. Still, she can present her innovative ideas on Monday, I said firmly. In the office. With the lawyers. There will be no impulsive decisions tonight. Sarah glared at me. Pure venom. The mask slipped completely. I saw the greed beneath. It was vast. Hungry. Ruthless. She twirled the emerald ring faster now. Agitated. I realized then I was the final obstacle, and she was prepared to remove it. Tonight, just then, the storm hit us. It wasn't gradual. It was sudden, violent. The yacht pitched hard, throwing us off balance. Rain came down in sheets, soaking us instantly. The wind howled like a living thing. The lights on the deck flickered. We need to get inside, I yelled over the noise. The deck was slick, dangerous. I turned to help Sarah. She brushed past me, heading toward David. He was near the railing, trying to secure a loose tarp flapping violently in the wind. I'll help him, she yelled back at me. Something felt wrong, terribly wrong. The storm was bad, but the instinct screaming inside me was worse. A primal fear, a warning siren in my soul. I started toward them, fighting the wind. Gripping the handrails tightly, the yacht lurched again. A massive wave hit us broadside. I was thrown against a bulkhead. My shoulder took the impact. My head cracked against the metal, hard. Stars exploded behind my eyes. I stumbled, dazed. Pain radiated down my arm. I fought off the dizziness, the nausea. The world tilted violently. When I steadied myself fighting through the pain, I heard it. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the thunder. It was a scream. A man's scream, sharp, terrified. cut short by the roar of the ocean, a sound I will hear in my nightmares forever. Sarah. David's voice. I scrambled toward the stern. Adrenaline flooded my system, clearing the fog. The rain stung my eyes, blinding me. David, I shouted. David! I reached the stern. Only one person was there. Sarah. She was clinging to the railing, her hair wild, her dress ruined. She was screaming hysterically, pointing at the churning black water. He fell, she shrieked, her voice raw, theatrical. Oh God, Robert, he fell. The wave hit us, and he slipped. I tried to grab him. I reached for his hand, but he was gone. Her acting was flawless, but I saw the flicker of triumph in her eyes before she masked it with terror. I looked at the water, my heart hammered against my ribs, a sickening thud. It was a black void, a churning cauldron of foam and fury. There was nothing, no sign of my son. The yacht was still moving, carrying us further away every second. Man overboard, I roared. I heard the emergency beacon. Frank, turn the ship around. Man overboard. I stared at Sarah. She was sobbing, collapsing onto the deck in a heap of silver fabric. It was a perfect performance. Emmy-worthy, but I knew, in my gut, in my soul, I remembered the argument. The desperation, the venom, the way she said his time is over. My son didn't slip. My son was murdered for 2 days. The next 48 hours were a nightmare. A blur of strobe lights, questions, the monotonous thud of helicopter blades. The Coast Guard arrived. Their searchlights cut through the storm, illuminating the angry waves. The Sea Sovereign became a crime scene, even if they wouldn't officially call it that. They called it an accident. A tragic accident. Sudden storm. Slippery deck. Captain Frank, a man who had worked for me for 20 years, corroborated Sarah's story. But something was terribly wrong. Frank stood at the navigation console. His voice monotone, robotic. He recounted the events. The storm hit hard. He was fighting the controls. He heard the scream. He initiated the search protocol immediately. He sounded like he had rehearsed it. I watched him closely. He wouldn't look at me. His eyes stayed fixed on the console, and he kept checking his watch, over and over, a nervous tick, like he couldn't wait to get away from me. When the police finished questioning him, I approached him. Frank, look at me. He didn't. He couldn't. He was lying, and I needed to know why. What did she have? Hand him, or what did she give him? They searched for hours. Long after the rain stopped, the sea calmed into an eerie, indifferent stillness. The ocean kept its secrets well. They found nothing. David, my only son, the heir to my empire, the boy I raised alone after his mother died when he was 5, declared lost at sea, presumed drowned. We returned to the harbor in silence. The Miami sun felt cruel, mocking our tragedy. Reporters swarmed the docks. Cameras flashed, hungry for our grief. They shouted questions, a frenzy of noise and light. I felt numb, detached. Sarah played the role of the devastated widow with chilling commitment. She clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder, her body trembling. She whispered, "How will we live without him, Robert?" Her breath was hot on my neck. I let her. I kept my face neutral, a mask of grief, but my skin crawled where she touched me. Every instinct told me to recoil, to accuse her, to scream the truth, but I couldn't. Not yet. Accusing the grieving widow without proof would look like madness. It would allow her to paint me as a monster trying to steal his own son's inheritance. I had to be smart. I had to be patient. I had to wait for her to make a mistake. I felt a grief so profound it threatened to break me. The pain was a physical ache, a constant pressure in my chest that made it hard to breathe. But beneath the grief, a cold, hard anger was forming. A diamond of rage forged under pressure. I had lost my son, and the woman responsible was pretending to mourn him. Already calculating her winnings. Back at the family estate, the sprawling mansion overlooking the bay, the silence was deafening. The house felt empty, cold, a mausoleum of memories. I walked through the halls, seeing David everywhere. Sarah retreated to the master suite, David's suite, claiming she needed rest, sedatives, dizziness. I knew she was lying. She wasn't resting. She was planning her next move. I went into my study, the room where I had built my empire. I locked the door. I needed a strategy. I rubbed the scar on my palm, thinking, planning. I had survived in business by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than my enemies. And Sarah, I now realized, was the greatest enemy I had ever faced. She had taken the most precious thing I had, and I was going to make her pay. 3 days after David's disappearance, the doorbell rang. It was Michael, my lawyer. He looked pale, exhausted, the grief heavy on his shoulders. "Robert, I don't even know what to say," Michael began. He sank into the leather chair. "I am so incredibly sorry." "Thank you, Michael. It's a nightmare." He cleared his throat. He started drumming his fingers on the desk. "There are matters we must discuss, Robert. The estate, the trust, the legal implications." Before he could finish, the study door opened. Sarah walked in, unannounced. She wore a black silk dressing gown, elegant, severe, her eyes hidden behind large, dark sunglasses. She didn't waste a second. "Michael, good," she said, her voice smooth as silk, devoid of the hysteria from the yacht. "I'm glad you're here." She walked straight to the sideboard and poured herself a drink. Scotch, neat. Her hands were steady. Too steady. "We need to finalize the transfer of the assets." Michael looked stunned, shocked by her bluntness. "Sarah," he started, his tone careful. The finger drumming stopped. "I understand you want to get things in order, but we are still in mourning. Robert just lost his son. There are protocols." "Protocols?" Sarah removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were dry, sharp, focused. "David is gone. I am his wife. I am the sole beneficiary. I need access to the funds immediately. The company needs leadership," she added, with chilling calculation. "David would have wanted me to take control." I watched her. Silent, observing her moves. She was bold. Moving fast. Too fast. "It's not that simple, Sarah," Michael explained gently. "The trust is complex. The authorities may still be investigating." "Investigating what?" Sarah snapped. The mask slipped. "It was an accident. Are you suggesting otherwise? Are you accusing me of something?" She was good, going on the offensive immediately, deflecting suspicion by attacking. Sarah turned to me. Her expression softened. An attempt at pleading. "Fake. Robert, please. Tell him this is unnecessary red tape. I need to protect David's legacy." I finally spoke, my voice low and steady. "Michael is right, Sarah. There are protocols, and I will not allow anything to be rushed." I needed to buy time. Time to find the proof. Sarah stared at me. Her eyes narrowed. Suspicion flared. She expected me to be broken. Grieving. Easy to manipulate. She was wrong. "Robert, the money is mine," she said, her voice rising, the entitlement dripping from every word. "You cannot keep it from me. You are emotionally compromised. You are not thinking clearly." She started twirling the emerald ring again, agitated. I stood up, towering over her. I leaned across the desk. "I am thinking more clearly than I have in years," I said. "The money belonged to my son, and until I am absolutely certain about what happened on that yacht, not a single dime will be touched." I instructed Michael right there. "Freeze the trust. Entirely. All $2 billion. Locked down. Inaccessible." Michael nodded, his face grim. "It's done, Robert." Sarah exploded. The mask shattered completely. The fury underneath was ugly. "You can't do this," she screamed, her face twisted in rage. "You old fool, I will sue you. I will take everything you have." This was a declaration of war. It put me in her crosshairs. But it was the only way to stop her from stealing the fortune David died for. "You are welcome to try," I said calmly. I walked out of the study, leaving her screaming at Michael. The war had begun, but she didn't know I was already mobilizing my army. I spent the next week tearing apart Sarah's life. I needed the best. I hired a team led by a former CIA operative named Kevin. Kevin arrived late at night. He was sharp, efficient. He didn't offer condolences. He just wanted the facts. He was constantly chewing gum, methodically, a rhythmic sound that filled the silence. "Tell me about her, Robert," Kevin said, opening his laptop. "Everything you know and everything you suspect." I told him everything. The vague past, the clean background check, the argument, the name Eric, the way she twirled her ring. Kevin listened silently, chewing his gum. A clean background check usually means a professional scrubbing that costs money. She had backing before she met your son. He looked up at me. She's a professional, Robert, and professionals don't work alone. The investigation gave me focus, purpose, a reason to keep breathing. The grief was still there, a constant ache, but the rage fueled me. Kevin's team worked fast. The old money from Boston story crumbled within days. It was a lie. Sarah came from nothing. A small town in Louisiana, a history of fraud, bad checks, multiple identities. She was a predator, a black widow. But the investigation hit a wall. Her past was deeply buried, professionally erased. Even Kevin struggled to find concrete proof. The trail was cold. "She's good, Robert," Kevin admitted, rubbing his temples. The gum chewing stopped. "She covers her tracks well. We need leverage. We need to go deeper." "What does that mean?" I asked. "Hacking databases, bribing informants, methods that are not strictly legal," Kevin said, his voice tight. "We are crossing into dangerous territory. Are you authorizing this?" I had always played by the rules, built my empire ethically. But this was different. This was for David. I was crossing moral lines I had never crossed before. "Do whatever it takes, Kevin. Find the truth." I crossed a line that day, and I didn't look back. And then they found Eric, the man she mentioned, on the yacht. Kevin put his picture on my desk. Tall, slick, a predatory smile. Eric wasn't just an associate. He was her lover, her partner. He was a disgraced investment banker. Banned the industry for running a Ponzi scheme. He was the mastermind. Kevin had surveillance photos of them together. Meetings in dark bars. Arguments in parking garages. Eric had a habit of cracking his knuckles when impatient. In the photos, his hands were a blur of motion. The Monaco investment wasn't an investment. It was an exit strategy. They were planning to steal the money and disappear. It all clicked into place. The rush, the desperation. She needed the money fast. And David, with his insistence on following the rules, was the obstacle. He stood between her and $1 billion. So she removed him. But I still had no proof of what happened on the yacht. It was her word against a dead man's silence. We needed a witness. We focused on the yacht captain. Frank, I knew he was lying. His nervous behavior, checking his watch, his refusal to meet my eyes. It all pointed to guilt. Kevin investigated the yacht's systems. He found something crucial. "Robert, the security cameras on the stern deck," Kevin reported, his voice grim. "Frank claimed they were damaged by the storm. He lied. He paused for effect. They were manually disabled, 1 hour before the incident." My blood ran cold. This was premeditated. They planned it, and then Kevin found the money trail. "He's dirty, Robert." The day before the trip, Frank received a wire transfer, $500,000, from a shell company registered in the Caymans. "Sarah," I whispered. The realization hit me like a physical blow. She bought his silence. She bought his cooperation. "That's our leverage," Kevin said. "Bravery to cover up a murder. That's conspiracy. We can squeeze him. We can break him." We finally had something concrete. A witness. A connection. We moved fast. We needed to question Frank before Sarah found out we were closing in. Kevin and I drove to his apartment. The door was unlocked. The apartment was empty. Cleared out. Clothes gone. Furniture gone. His boat was missing from the marina. Frank had vanished. Sarah was tying up loose ends. She knew we were getting closer. She paid him off and told him to run. Or worse. I felt a wave of despair. My key witness was gone. And with him, the only proof I had. It felt like I had lost David all over again. Frank's disappearance made Sarah nervous, but also bolder. The frozen trust was squeezing her. Her debts were being called in. Eric was getting impatient. Kevin's surveillance team reported loud arguments, Eric cracking his knuckles furiously, Sarah twirling her ring non-stop. They were becoming desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. She started liquidating assets in the house. Art, jewelry, expensive cars. Anything she could sell quickly, she was preparing to run. But she wasn't just running. She was erasing. And that's when she crossed a line she couldn't come back from. She decided to destroy not just my present, but my past, too. I found her in the main living room. The room my wife had loved, the room where David took his first steps. She was redecorating, boxing up David's belongings. His photos, his favorite books. She was humming while she packed away his life, erasing his memory from the house, like he never existed. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice tight with barely controlled rage. The anger simmered just below the surface. Sarah didn't even look at me. She was measuring the wall for new paint. "We need to move forward, Robert," she said coldly, her voice devoid of any emotion. "Holding on to the past isn't healthy," she continued, examining a paint swatch. "This room needs a fresh start. I'm thinking pale gray for the walls. It's very modern. It took every ounce of my self-control not to break the facade. I had to play the grieving father, the defeated old man, my hands clenched into fists. I rubbed the scar on my palm. I had to walk away before I ruined everything. I watched her, maintaining the facade, while secretly trying to find Frank. Trying to find any shred of evidence. The strain was immense. Seeing her every day, knowing what she had done to my son. It was eating me alive. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like. It was that evening, sitting in the dark, that I hit rock bottom. The study was illuminated only by the moonlight streaming through the window. I was looking at a picture of David when he was a boy, holding his first fishing rod, smiling proudly. My heart clenched. I felt utterly defeated. She was going to get away with it. She had killed my son and stolen his future. I had failed him. Then my private phone rang. The secure line, the one only Kevin and Michael had the number for. It was an international prefix, a satellite number. I almost ignored it. I didn't have the strength to talk. But something, some flicker of hope, told me to answer. "Hello?" There was static, a crackling sound, and then a faint voice, weak, raspy, but unmistakable. "Dad?" My heart stopped. The room spun around me. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. It couldn't be. I was hallucinating. The grief was finally driving me mad. "Dad, are you there?" "That's me." It was David. Tears streamed down my face. Hot and sudden, I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. The relief was so overwhelming it felt like pain. It broke the dam of grief I had been holding back. "David! Oh God, David! You're alive? You're alive?" "I'm alive, Dad." His voice was weak, exhausted. But it was him. I'm in a small clinic, in the Bahamas. The fishing boat found me, hours after it happened. I clung to a piece of debris, drifted for miles. He was alive. My son was alive. "What happened, son?" I asked, the urgency rising. I needed to hear it from him. "Tell me exactly what happened." "Did you slip?" There was a long pause. When David spoke again, his voice was filled with a pain that had nothing to do with his injuries. "It wasn't an accident, Dad." "She pushed me," David whispered. "Sarah pushed me off the yacht." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I knew it, hearing him say it made it real. The rage returned, white hot, blinding. "She confessed everything right before she did it," David continued, his voice trembling with rage and betrayal. "She told me about Eric, the Monaco plan. She said she never loved me, that I was just a paycheck." He choked back a sob, and then she shoved me, hard, and watched me fall. She smiled. "Dad," she smiled as I fell. "I knew it, David. I knew it." Where are you? I'm coming right now. I'm sending the jet. I was already moving towards the door. No, Dad, you can't, David said urgently. If she knows I'm alive, she'll run. She and Eric, they will disappear. Or worse, they'll try again. They are dangerous. My overwhelming relief clashed violently with the realization. His life was still in danger. We had to be smart. Sarah and Eric were cornered. And a cornered animal is the most dangerous. I had to keep his survival a secret, even from Michael, until we could guarantee his safety, until we could ensure Sarah paid for her crimes. Okay, David, okay. We have to be careful. We need a plan. David wanted to come home immediately, to confront her, to go to the police. He was fueled by anger. We can't just go to the police, I explained, pacing the floor, my mind racing. She is the grieving widow, the sympathetic figure. It's your word against hers. She will claim you are delusional, that the trauma affected your memory. We need proof, I said. Undeniable proof. We need a confession. I needed help from the inside. I contacted Detective Lisa Martinez, head of major crimes. Sharp. No nonsense. I trusted her reputation. Incorruptible. She had a habit of tapping her pen rapidly during intense conversations, a sign her mind was working fast. I met her late at night, in a deserted parking garage. I told her everything. I showed her the evidence Kevin had gathered. Sarah's past. Eric, the bribed captain, the disabled cameras. Detective Martinez listened. Her pen tapped rapidly on her notebook. It's a compelling story, Robert. A strong, circumstantial case. But without the captain, and without physical evidence, it's not enough for a conviction. My son is alive, I said, the words still feeling unreal. He is the witness. Martinez paused. The tapping stopped. That changes things, but defense lawyers will tear him apart on the stand. Trauma, memory loss, revenge motive. We still need more. We needed her to make a mistake. A fatal mistake. The mistake came sooner than expected. Sarah, unable to access the main trust, tried another route, a smaller, secondary account. David set up years ago, emergencies only. It only had about $1 million. But she was desperate. She needed cash to run. She forged David's signature on withdrawal documents and submitted them to the bank. I had to tell Michael now. I needed his help. I called him, told him to come over immediately. When Michael arrived, I didn't waste time. Michael David is alive. He stared at me, stunned, disbelieving. Then overjoyed, tears streamed down his face. Robert, how? Where is he? He's safe, but we need to move fast. Sarah is getting desperate. I showed him the forged documents. The bank manager had alerted me to. Michael looked at the signature. His voice trembled with excitement. Robert, we have her. Sarah submitted documents with David's signature dated after his disappearance. It's a clear forgery. It's fraud. This was it? It wasn't murder, but it was a felony. It was a way to get her cornered. To force her hand. Okay, Michael, I said, my mind racing, the plan forming in my head. We are going to set a trap. A trap so perfect she won't even know she's caught, until the jaws snap shut. I instructed Michael to call Sarah. Tell her the trust was cleared. The $2.2 billion would be released. Michael hesitated. He started drumming his fingers on the desk. Robert, she knows you hate her. She knows you froze the trust. Why would she believe this sudden change of heart? It makes no sense. We were risking everything on this gamble. Greed blinds people, Michael, I said. It makes them see what they want to see. And Sarah is the greediest person I have ever met. The lure of the money will be too strong to resist. Michael made the call, his voice steady, professional. He told her I had conceded, that the lawyers found a loophole. The funds were hers. He told her she had to sign the final paperwork at the family home, in my study, a formality, a symbolic gesture of the transfer of power. Sarah was ecstatic. She didn't even question it. She didn't hesitate. She agreed to meet at the house the next afternoon. The trap was set. Now we just had to wait for the viper to enter the nest. The next day, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The air crackled with anticipation, the calm before the final storm. I stood in the hallway, looking at the study door. Inside, Michael was waiting with the paperwork. The study was wired, microphones and hidden cameras everywhere, capturing every angle, every word. Detective Martinez and her team were in the surveillance van parked down the street, watching, listening, ready to move in. My heart was pounding, the steady drumbeat of impending justice. Everything depended on this moment. I rubbed the scar on my palm. It was time to finish this. I looked toward the adjacent room where David was waiting. He had arrived late last night, smuggled into the house by Kevin's security team. He was ready. He needed to face the woman who tried to steal his life. The doorbell rang, echoing through the silent house. I opened the door. Sarah stood there, radiating triumph. She wore a red dress, bold and aggressive, the color of blood and victory. She wasn't alone. Eric was with her. He stood behind her, slick, a predatory smile and cold, dead eyes. They looked like they already owned the world. "Robert," Sarah said, smiling brightly, a fake warmth in her voice. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it? A day for new beginnings." "It is, Sarah," I said, stepping aside to let them in. "Michael is waiting in the study." They walked past me, their heels clicking on the marble floor. They didn't even look at me. I was irrelevant now. The old king, defeated and broken. They thought they had won. I followed them to the study door and watched them walk in. The door closed behind them. I moved to the surveillance monitor. Kevin sat up in the adjacent room. David stood beside me, his face pale with rage. We could see everything, hear everything. "Sarah, Eric, good afternoon," Michael said, standing up, his face a mask of professional neutrality. "Please, have a seat. We have the final documents for the release of the funds." Sarah sat down, picked up the expensive gold pen I had laid out on the desk. Eric stood behind her, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder. He cracked his knuckles, impatient. $2 billion, Sarah whispered, her eyes gleaming with avarice. She twirled the emerald ring on her finger, confident. Finally, it's about time. She started signing the papers, her signature bold and confident, page after page, transferring the wealth, the power, the legacy. "It's done," she announced, capping the pen, smiling triumphantly at Eric. "We did it, baby. We are billionaires." Eric chuckled, a dark, satisfied sound. "Monaco awaits." "You played it perfectly, Sarah." The Grieving Widow Act was flawless. Sarah laughed, a cold, cruel sound that chilled my blood. It wasn't hard. The old fool Robert was so broken he didn't even suspect a thing. He bought the whole act. "And David?" Eric asked, his voice dripping with disdain. "David was weak," Sarah said, examining her nails. "He was pathetic. So eager to please. He made it easy." Then she said the words that sealed her fate. Pushing him was almost too simple. He barely fought back. They had confessed. Everything. The cameras recorded it all. The audio crystal clear. Detective Martinez signaled her team. They were moving in. This was the moment. I nodded to David. He walked towards the study door. Sarah and Eric were pouring champagne, celebrating their victory. The study doors opened. Sarah looked up, annoyed at the interruption. Her eyes widened in absolute, paralyzing shock. Her face turned white, the color of bone. The champagne glass slipped from her hand. Shattering on the floor, Eric stumbled back, his smug expression replaced by sheer terror. David stood in the doorway. He was thinner, paler, the scars of his ordeal still visible, but he was alive, and he was staring right at them, his eyes burning with a cold fury. "Hello, Sarah." Sarah couldn't move. She couldn't speak. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. A terrifying apparition returned from the grave to exact revenge. "Looking for me?" David asked, walking slowly into the room, his steps steady and purposeful. Sarah gasped, scrambling back in her chair, her eyes darting wildly around the room, looking for an escape. David! No, no, it's impossible. You're dead. You drowned. Am I? David said, stopping in front of the desk, towering over her. You tried so hard, didn't you, pushing me off the yacht, thinking the ocean would keep your secret, thinking you could just erase me and take everything. It didn't, Sarah stammered, her voice trembling, the lies failing her now. I tried to save you. You slipped. It was an accident. Liar, David roared, slamming his fist on the desk. The sound cracked like a gunshot. You confessed. You told me everything before you pushed me. And you just confessed again, right now, to Eric. We heard everything. Eric, seeing the inevitable, turned on her instantly, the loyalty between thieves vanishing in the face of capture. It was her idea, Eric shouted, pointing at Sarah, desperate to save himself. She planned everything. She pushed him. I just handled the money. Sarah turned on him, her face contorted in a mask of rage. You coward! You traitor! It's over, Sarah, I said, walking into the room, my voice low and steady, filled with a profound satisfaction. Just then, Detective Martinez and 4 uniformed officers walked into the study, their weapons drawn. Sarah, Eric, Detective Martinez said, her voice calm and professional. You are under arrest for the attempted murder of David Miller, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and grand larceny. Sarah looked at the officers, then back at David, then at me. The reality crashed down on her. Her facade shattered. The elegant, sophisticated widow was gone, replaced by a terrified, desperate criminal. No! She screamed. She tried to run. The officers grabbed her. Eric surrendered immediately, his hands raised in the air. You can't do this to me. Sarah shrieked as they handcuffed her. The money is mine. I deserve it. I earned it. They dragged her out of the house, her red dress a splash of color against the gray uniforms. The sound of her screams was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. The silence that followed was profound, peaceful. The war was over. The news exploded. The story was too sensational, too cinematic to ignore. The billionaire Black Widow, the ghost husband returns. The dramatic confrontation in the Miami mansion. It was the trial of the century. The trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming. The confession we captured in the study was the centerpiece. The forged documents, the fraud, and then there was the final piece of the puzzle. Captain Frank, Kevin's team tracked him down, hiding in the Cayman Islands. He was extradited. He testified against Sarah in exchange for a lighter sentence. He confirmed the bribe, confirmed she paid him to disable the cameras and lie about the accident. He admitted he knew what she planned to do. Eric turned on Sarah too, testifying against her to save himself. He detailed their entire plan, how they targeted David, how they planned to steal the fortune and disappear. He painted her as the mastermind, and David's harrowing account of that night on the yacht. His voice, filled with raw emotion, silenced the courtroom. He described her smile as he fell. Judge Evelyn Reed, stern and posing woman, known for her harsh sentences, presided over the trial. She showed no mercy. Sarah was found guilty on all charges, sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Eric received 20 years. Frank got 5 years for his complicity. Justice was served. In the aftermath, we dealt with the legal fallout. The fraudulent marriage was annulled. The fortune was secured. Michael handled the paperwork, ensuring the legacy was protected. The company safe. We cleaned house, restoring the integrity of the empire I had built. A few months later, David and I stood on the shore behind the mansion, looking at the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The water was calm, peaceful. I had sold the sea sovereign. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore. It's strange, David said, picking up a shell, examining it. I used to love the ocean. It was my sanctuary. Now, when I look at it, I see the darkness. I feel the cold. It holds dark memories, I said. I put my arm around his shoulder, feeling the strength and resilience in him. But it also brought you back to me. It gave you a second chance. David leaned against me, the familiar weight comforting. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you, Dad. Well, not Sarah. You saw what she was. Right from the beginning, I was blind. I was a fool. You were in love, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Love makes us vulnerable. But you survived. You fought, and you won. You are stronger now. Wiser. We stood there for a long time, watching the sunset. The silence comfortable between us. The past few months had tested us, broken us, and ultimately forged a bond between us that was unbreakable. I had built an empire, amassed a fortune, shaped a city. But looking at my son, alive and safe beside me, I knew the true value of my legacy. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the buildings. It wasn't the power. It was him. As the last sliver of the sun disappeared below the horizon, I finally felt peace. The dread was gone. The rage had subsided. We were safe. And we were together. The future, once so uncertain, now stretched out before us, bright and full of promise. We had faced the darkness, and we had won. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your time matters.